Hey guys, welcome back. If you are new around here, I cover mostly Australian true crime cases, and today I'm covering a unsolved case. It's a very local one to me, one that needs telling. It is a little shorter, on the shorter side, but as I said, it is one that needs to be told. So let's get straight into it. So Kerry Suzanne Turner was born in Perth, Australia in September of 1972 and was the youngest of 3 children. Her parents, John and Sue Turner, had migrated to Perth, Australia from the UK in 1970 for a better life. Tragedy struck the Turners when in 1985, their teenage son Jamie, who was only 18 years old, died after being injected with drugs by a man who was later charged with manslaughter over Jamie's death. 6 years later, on June the 30th, 1991, tragedy would strike the Turners for a second time when their daughter, who was now 18, coincidentally the same age as her own brother Jamie when he passed away, went missing. Next month, which is June of 2019, will mark 28 years since Kerry Turner went missing. And her father, John Turner, described Kerry as a bright and bubbly 18-year-old, like they are, a beautiful looking girl, and she was full of confidence and had no fear of anything. And her mother described Kerry as a good girl, remarking on the closeness of the relationship between mother and daughter. Kerry was a childcare worker, although some reports did say she was a shop assistant. Perhaps she was both. Either way, she was working or was employed at the time. So let's talk about the day that Kerry Turner went missing. It was June 29th, 1991, which was a Saturday, and Kerry had initially planned to be home for dinner with her parents. She had rang her mum earlier saying she would be home for dinner, but a couple of hours later rang her mum again and informed her of a change of plans. She told her mum that she would be going out that evening to the city with her friend Kylie and not to expect her home. Her mother told her to be careful before hanging up the phone, not knowing this would be the last time she spoke to Kerry. Kerry, who had her license and a car that her parents had bought her, did not take her car into the city that night, likely because her and her friend Kylie had been planning to have a couple of drinks. So her car was parked in the suburb of Armadale here in Perth, and I don't know if this was Kylie's house or not, but it is pretty likely that it was. So her car was left in this suburb in Armadale, and her and Kylie went to the city. Kerry went out that night wearing a black and white striped top, black pants, black shoes, and a red jacket. And according to the Crime Stoppers WA website, Kerry and Kylie actually hitchhiked into the city that night. So Armadale is about 40 odd minutes from the city, I reckon. And that would be quite an expense for a taxi for two 18-year-olds. And that combined with the fact that in 1991, I think hitchhiking was still considered pretty safe. And this was Perth, which is, or was a pretty sleepy town back then. So I'm sure both the girls, especially combined with Kerry's confidence, would have been pretty happy to hitchhike. Kerry and Kylie went to Pinocchio's nightclub that night, which is located on Murray Street. And for my Perth locals, that is now the Amplifier Capital Bar, or Amps, or whatever the young'uns are calling it. And they arrived there at about 10:30 p.m. that night. During the night, Kerry and Kylie did become separated, but the pair continued to mingle with the Saturday night crowds. However, when it came to getting home and Kerry couldn't find Kylie, it did pose a bit of a problem, as Kerry did not have enough taxi money to actually get home to her parents' house, which was in Bickley. Now, we don't know whether Kerry was trying to get to Bickley, where her parents lived, or to Armadale, where Kylie, or at least a friend, lived and where her car was. It would make sense that she was trying to get back to Armidale so she could just crash at her friend's house, who hopefully had arrived home by that point, and just drive home in the morning. Or the fact that her parents' house, although not close, was a bit closer, may have made sense. So her parents' house in Bickley was about a half an hour drive. Armidale was about a 40-minute drive. Either way, Kerry didn't have the money for a 30 or a 40-minute taxi. I don't know about other cities in the world, and I don't know about 1991 for that matter, but a 30-minute or 40-minute taxi, even for me now, is a lot of money, let alone for one 18-year-old. It's expensive. So Kerry did actually end up leaving the city in a taxi, or leaving Murray Street in a taxi at around 4 a.m. But the taxi driver pretty quickly realized that Kerry didn't have enough money, or any money, for the taxi. I don't know if she had a little bit of money or none at all, but not enough for the taxi ride she needed. And the taxi driver dropped her off on the Causeway a couple of minutes outside of Perth City. Witnesses claim they saw Kerry sitting on the curbside of the Causeway and trying to hitchhike, and she did eventually get into another cab that took her as far as East Victoria Park, where she was dropped off around 5 a.m. in front of a well-lit all-night cafe called Cafe Affair. And Cafe Affair is now this Italian restauranty cafe thing called Conkers for my Perth locals that I actually drive by pretty often. So it's pretty strange such a familiar place was where she ended up. But anyway, not important. Oh, and there's a cat. I'm assuming this taxi driver also realised that Kerry didn't have enough money on her to get to Bickley or Armidale, and probably decided to drop her off somewhere that he or she would have considered safe, well lit. It was 5 in the morning. It was the middle of the year, but still, well lit all night cafe would have seemed pretty safe. Even to me, that would seem like a safe place to drop a young girl off, because she could have gone in, called friends, called family, etc. And just for reference, the all-night cafe, Cafe Affair, in East Vic Park was not really any closer to her parents' house in Bickley than the city was. It was still about half an hour drive, probably a little less that time in the morning, give or take a few minutes. So she wasn't any closer, certainly not within walking distance whatsoever. Upon leaving the taxi, Kerry started to cross the road when a car sped up and stopped behind her. And this car had been travelling southeast along Shepparton Road. According to the two witnesses in the all-night cafe, the person in the car called out to Kerry, and Kerry went up to the car, talked to the driver for a couple of minutes before getting in the car and being driven away the direction the car had been going, southeast up Shepparton Road. One report did say that she got into the back of the car, not the passenger side like the witnesses, I believe, said. This is where it gets a little bit murky, because if she got into the back, potentially there was two people in the front, or maybe she was just keeping safe and sitting in the back, which is what I used to do when I was younger and was traveling by myself in a taxi. I would get into the back seat because I didn't trust the taxi drivers. But this wasn't a taxi. We don't know who this was. That's the thing. We don't know if this was someone that Kerry knew or if she was hitchhiking. The car was described as possibly dark blue or just dark coloured, and it was possibly a Datsun 260C or something similar with spoked wheels. However, another witness described the car as a fawn colour, which is like a lightish yellowish tannish colour, which is not even close to dark or dark blue, so kind of hard to say what the colour of the car was. But spoked wheels, which I didn't even know what they were until I read this, is a pretty defining feature. So I googled it, and apparently it is the number of rods coming out of the center hub of the wheel. I'll insert some photos to clear that up. And I'll also insert a photo of the Datsun car mentioned. Kerry did not return home that day or that night, and on July the 1st, one day after Kerry went missing, her parents phoned the police. The friend that Kerry went out with that night, Kylie, has since stated or said that she is still angry with herself that she let Kerry leave the club alone that night. She stated, "I can't change what happened. I just wish she was still here. It still affects me really badly. I rack my brain constantly trying to put that night together." So the car that Kerry was taken away in was one of the few, if not the only, leads that investigators had from that night. And police did search for that car, but nothing was ever found. And her father, John, does wonder if it is possible that maybe it was a car from interstate. John also believes it's very possible that the person that Kerry got into the car with was someone that she knew. He stated, "It's just mystifying that she would be so positively walking around the back of the car and getting in unless she knew the person." John Turner also said he doesn't understand why his daughter just didn't call him for a lift that night, stating, "I always went out to pick up my daughter at any time and she knew that. So we don't know why she decided to hitchhike, but she did." These two facts alone lead me to believe that Kerry did know the person she got into the car with. The fact that she knew she was able to call her father or her parents to be picked up, and the fact that she just willingly got in this car. I mean, hitchhiking's not out of the realm of possibility, but having said that, if Kerry and Kylie both hitchhiked into the city without issue, and Kerry being the confident and fearless girl that she was, hitchhiking back to her parents' house or to Kylie's house probably wasn't a big deal, especially I guess at 5 in the morning when the sun was going to be up soon. She may have felt she was in a safe area. After a couple of drinks, it's hard to say. Tragically, on the 28th of July 1991, almost 1 month to the day since Kerry Turner had gone missing, her body was found in bushland behind a log near the Canning Dam by a member of the public out on a picnic, and she was fully clothed. This was 40 kilometres from where she was last seen in East Victoria Park. It has been reported as a homicide, but no other details have been made public at this time. A question that may linger, particularly for locals in this case, is it possible that Kerry Turner was a victim of the Claremont serial killer, aka Bradley Robert Edwards, who goes on trial in July? Look, I couldn't find anything online that was recent that would allude to this being a possibility. And police have told the Turners that the timeline of Edwards and when he was committing the heinous crimes he committed of Sarah Spears, Kira Glennon and Jane Rimmer don't fit into the timeline of when Kerry was killed. And that makes sense, I guess, but again, I couldn't find anything that alluded to the fact police were even looking into Edwards as a possibility, so it's a bit up in the air. Maybe let me know what you think. I really don't know. But I mean, the similarities are there. You know, a pretty young girl willingly gets into a car after a night out and her body's found in a remote area. I couldn't find any way to contact anyone in the Turner family that would be like a donation site or like a petition site. But if you know anything, I will leave the Crime Stoppers number down below. And thank you so much for listening to Kerry Turner's story and the Turner family. Thank you for listening to their story. I hope we can get this local case solved, or I hope the police, the investigators, the family can get this case solved in the very near future. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay safe, guys. And I will see you next time. Bye.